Now let us go to the next hardware, and that is mouse. Now most of the computers have a mouse nowadays that have 3 buttons, actually 2 buttons, and there is one scroller. A wheel is there which you can scroll to move up and down, and that scroll wheel also works like a button. If you just press on the scroll wheel, there's another button waiting for us over there. So let us go ahead and check out what these operations can do for us. So with the button operations on the mouse, directly when we click any button on the mouse, what happens is we have the left click, we have the right click, that means the right side button we have to click. Scroll wheel, when we scroll, that is called as a scroll wheel, and scroll click. So when we click the scroll button, that's what we get, the scroll click. And finally we have a combination called shift and scroll click. So let us have a look at what these do actually in AutoCAD. So left click, as I told, left click is used for selecting either an object. If you are on an object, hovering on an object, it will select the object, like I'm selecting the lines now. And if you are clicking in the empty area, it will start drawing a rectangle. If you click and drag in the empty area, it will start drawing some polygon like object, which will select the objects. These are the functions you can achieve with the left click. Now with the right click usually provides a quick menu where most usual commands are visible. So most of the navigation commands are visible. Here you can see we have zoom, pan. Pan is used for moving it aside, and zoom is for increasing or decreasing the space. So these type of commands are available in the right side menu along with the recently used commands. So all the recently used commands and the most recently used commands, it is available at the top itself. So you can go on to select one of these with the right click. Apart from these, the right click also works similar to enter or spacebar in some of the cases. Like if I give the move command, first it is telling me now in the command line to select the objects. Now when I select the object, I have to press enter or spacebar. Instead of entering or pressing spacebar, you can also right click and it will move to the next step. So these are the two functions of the right click of the button. Now coming to the scroll wheel. Scroll wheel works like zoom. Fine. So when I'm rotating the scroll wheel on the mouse, you can see zoom operation is being performed. Now this zoom option that we perform in AutoCAD, it's very, very smart. So it depends on where you are keeping your plotter and zooming. Accordingly, it will zoom to that particular point. Fine. So let me show you how. So if I keep my cursor over here at this part, and if I click zoom, you can see it is zooming to show me that particular part. Whereas if I keep my cursor over here in the left corner and zoom in, you can see it is showing me the particular part on which I have placed the plotter. So you can just position your plotter suitably on the screen. Whichever part you want to see, there you can position your scroller or your mouse cursor, and you can rotate the scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. So that was about the scroll wheel. Now let us go ahead and check what happens if we press the scroll button. So when we press the scroll button, it is providing us with an option called pan. Now that pan option is also available over here, but if you choose it from right click menu, the left click itself will perform the pan operation. So for some reason, if your scroll wheel button has gone defective, then you can use the right click menu to perform the pan. But if your scroll wheel button is working perfectly, you can just press the scroll wheel button to use the pan and rotate the wheel to zoom option. Okay. Okay, so the last operation of the button here that I had mentioned was shift plus scroll click. Now shift plus scroll click is for 3D objects. So here I have loaded a 3D object for you people. So this is a tailstock, a complete view of the tailstock, and it is in 3D. So now I will just press shift, and while the shift button is pressed, I will use the scroll button and move my mouse. Fine. So now not only I have the shift button pressed, but I have clicked the scroll wheel button and I'm moving the mouse. Fine. So what's happening is, you can see the object is rotating in 3D. Fine. object is rotating in 3D. Okay, so after having done the shift plus scroll click, let's go to the next set of commands. So I'm calling these as the extra aids, the extra helpers, which will help us in navigating through AutoCAD. Let us see them one by one. First is the view cube. So the view cube here you can see in graphic area. So this black screen we have here, which we are drawing the objects. This is called graphic area. The top right of the graphic area here, you can see this is called as the view cube. Now the view cube allows us to view the same geometry from different directions. So once again, 2D diagram will not help us analyze the view cube totally. You can of course go to 3D as well from the view cube, within the view cube, but it will not allow us to see the complete benefit of using the view cube. So let us shift to a 3D object. So here we have a 3D object, and let us use the view cube to shift between the 3D objects. So now before using the 3D objects, I suggest you just watch below that. So below that there is an option to change the UCS. UCS is the user coordinate system. And when we draw something, we will be actually drawing in the XY plane of the UCS. And WCS is world coordinate system. The WCS of AutoCAD remains fixed at one particular point, and all other points are essentially measured from WCS. But when you want to draw something, if the WCS is constant at one particular point, and if you want to refer every point from there, drawing the object becomes a bit difficult, and hence there is something called UCS. And these UCS that we have, we can move it to any particular point, and when we move the UCS to some new point, whatever we draw will be drawn from that UCS point of view, and this makes the diagram very easy. Although here it has been set to some unnamed UCS, we have to change back to WCS. So when you are changing it back to WCS, you can see the view cube has changed its position. Right now it is showing the top view, whereas in the previous case it was showing some other view, backside view or something. So in case something like that is happening, you should make sure that you are shifting back to WCS, the world coordinate system. Now this view cube, you can click various points in it. You can click on the very middle of the face. Here you can see I'm clicking on the top view, so it will take me directly to the top view. I can click on one of the corners. That will take me to the isometric view. So you can see here, this is the isometric view of the object. You can also click on the side edges. If you're clicking on the edges, it will take me a middle view between the top and right. And so this is how you can shift between different points. Fine. If you want to see it from the bottom side, you can click corner points at the bottom. Of course, it will rotate and show you from different directions. And in case you just want to rotate it using the view cube, you can do that as well. You just have to click somewhere on the view cube and click and drag. Yeah. So when you're dragging by clicking on the view cube, you're getting the orbit, 3D orbit command. But of course it's slightly difficult to operate it from that perspective, so we can rather go to some other options. So this is about the view cube. So next option we have here is called as the navigation wheel. So navigation wheel can be picked up straight from this floating bar on the right, or you can just right click anywhere on the screen, and from the right click menu also you can pick it up. So you can see here it's called as the steering wheel. So when you choose that option, there will be a toolbar which will move along with your cursor. So wherever my cursor moves, that toolbar will also move along with it. So if you want to use these options, what you have to do is you have to move it to a convenient place and then click on the particular command which you want to execute. So panning means moving it sideways. So I'll just pan it first. So I'll just click on it So I'm just using left click. I'm not using right click or the scroll wheel click. I'm just simply using the left click button to use it to pan. Next, let us see how the zoom works. To use the zoom, again, you just have to move the cursor on the zoom, left click and move up to zoom in and move down to zoom out. So this is how the zoom command works. Next up, let us see whether it orbits properly. So if you want to use orbit, you just have to move your cursor on the orbit and click and drag. You can see it is rotating. So it's rotating the complete view of the object along with the UCS. You can see here the UCS is also rotating along with it. And yeah. So now what if I want to rotate it about some other point? So that's when what you have to do is you have to choose the center point. So when you move the center point, what's happening is essentially the pivot point is moving to some other position. Fine. Now that the center point has been moved, now try to orbit it, and you can see this point where we moved the center, that's remaining constant on the screen, and the whole body, in fact the whole environment is rotating, keeping that point we selected called pivot as constant at the center. So we can move the center around wherever we want, and we can start operating, and all the transformations, all the movements, all the navigation that is happening will happen about that center point. There are a few more options here. We have look, we have up down, and we have walk. So these three options, any one of these options we choose, this will essentially change the very projection system. So we have to be a little careful when we do that. So let me just choose, okay, I'll just go with WCS, and I'll go with one of the views here. Okay. So now I'll just take back that field. Still there. And now I'll just go to walk, let us say. As soon as I click on the walk, you can see there was a slight change. So what change happened was the parallel coordinate system, the parallel way of projection was in fact changed to perspective. So that you can check here at the top left corner, you have an option to choose the different views. And here parallel and perspective are the two options. So as soon as I choose something or one among these three options, it will automatically change to perspective, because these three are meant to work in the perspective fashion. So what happens in perspective is the objects which are nearer to us will appear larger, but when the same object goes far away from us, it starts appearing slightly smaller. So the same wheel now, if you see, it is appearing slightly smaller. So, but if you bring it to the front, its size actually increases to some extent, and the backside objects, they are slightly lesser in size. So this is called the perspective effect. Now if we choose the option to walk, I can walk left side, I can walk right side, I can go nearer to the object, or I can go far away from the object. Fine. So this is how the walking will work. Let us go ahead and see the other options. Okay, after having seen the navigation field, let us move on to the other options available on the right side floating bar. So we can see here we have an option called pan, and we have already seen this pan option in the wheel. If you are able to take the wheel and do the panning, that also is allowed, and this is another way of doing it. You can directly take it from here and do it. And of course, if your middle scroll wheel button, if it's working, you can just tap on the scroll wheel button and that command will become activated. There is no need for you to go to any toolbar in that particular case. Now the next option we have is zoom command. Now zoom has many different options under itself. You just can click this small arrow underneath it and you will be able to see all the options that are available in zoom. Zoom extent means whatever object we have, whatever objects we have drawn, all those objects will fit in on our screen. You can also zoom to a particular window. You can draw a window to which it will zoom in, and we have so many different options, but we mostly don't use most of these options, so we can just skip that for now. You can also use the zoom command from the keyboard. You just have to press Z, enter, and all those options which you saw over there will appear here at the bottom in the command window, command line, and from here also you can choose those options. If you press Z double enter, you will be able to get the zoom real-time option, which you can know, after taking which you can just use left click and dragging up and down to zoom in and zoom out. So right now you can see we are in the perspective mode. If you want to shift to the parallel mode, you just have to go here to the left top corner in the drawing area and the graphics window, and you have to choose parallel instead of perspective. Now you can see we are back in the parallel view. So this will make our journey here from here onwards a little bit easier. So as I told, the zoom command can be taken from here, the floating window, or from the command line by pressing Z enter. All the options will appear here, or you can just right click and choose the zoom option from here. That as well will actually work. Now if we right click and choose the option of zoom, by default it will be in real-time mode. Fine. That means just by clicking, left clicking and dragging up and down, you'll be able to drag, you'll be able to zoom in and zoom out in real time. If you want some other options of the zoom, you can right click after taking the zoom command, and you can see those options are available here. So if you zoom to a window, you can draw a window to which to zoom, and if you choose extends, it will show all the objects that are drawn on screen and so on. So this way you can use the zoom command. Now we have a dedicated orbit command as well over here. Fine. So this has a dedicated orbit command, and the pivot point is fixed here by default in the center somewhere of the object, and about that point object is rotating. So under that, if you click on the arrow, you have some more options over here. If you choose free orbit, then a circle will appear here at the top, and the advantage of that circle is we can rotate the object in one particular direction. Like right now I'm rotating it about a vertical axis at this present orientation. You can also rotate it about a horizontal axis, this. If you click inside this, it will just rotate in all particular directions, and if you click outside, it will just roll it sideways, yeah, about an axis which is perpendicular to our screen. So this is what we have with the free orbit. And finally the continuous orbit, and this is my favorite, because once we choose the continuous orbit, disturb a little and just leave it, I'm not doing anything. I've actually left the mouse button, and still the object continues to rotate smoothly at constant speed. So whenever I just want to display the end result of the complete diagram, and especially if the object is 3D, then I usually take this continuous orbit command, rotate it slightly and leave it in this position, so that students can watch this 3D object from all kinds of directions. We can also use it kind of like a screensaver, and yeah, this is really good to use. There's one last option, that is for animation. We'll not cover it in this part of the video. We'll do it some other day. So yeah, well, we are done with most of these commands. We have seen the zoom commands and we have seen the 3D orbit command. Let's move on to the next part. Now this thing that we have, it's called plotter, and a plotter is a very essential part of AutoCAD. And plotter actually allows us to know, it actually helps us to not only understand orientation of the screen at any given point of time, it also helps us to draw the objects correctly and also to select the objects correctly. So when none of the commands are active, we are by default in the selection mode, and we see a small box at the center of the thing that's moving. The complete part that's moving is called a plotter. When we are in 3D, we can actually see the 3 lines. One is for X, one is for Y, and one is for Z. The red is X. You can see here with the UCS, you can compare and try to understand what they are. X is usually red, Y is green, and Z is blue. So when we are moving in 3D, the plotter will have 3 axes. The longer ones are the positive directions and the shorter ones are for negative directions. But if we are moving in 2 dimensions, like here you can see in this file, we just have 2-dimensional drawings placed on it. So you can see how the plotter looks like. The plotter has the same pick box, which helps us in selecting the objects. As soon as an object comes within the pick box, we can select it. And there are, of course, 2 lines. One line is vertical, the other horizontal. These lines are called crosshair, and they help us understand the relative position of the point. And this box at the center, it's pick box, and it helps us in selecting the objects. Now there is one more object that is most of the times hidden. It is hidden by default, but you can enable it, you can activate it, and that's called Aperture. Now whenever we take a draw command, whenever we take any of these commands from the draw, the pick box will just disappear. Let's see how it happens. So as soon as I take a line command, you can see the pick box is gone. Now we just have a dotted kind of a box at the center, and that essentially is the aperture. Now why is the aperture appearing? I had told you that it will not be visible, and yet we see that there is a box over there. That is because I had changed the setting of it to make it appear. So you can hide it back as default. You just have to type in AP box, and here in the command line you can see the default option is not the default option. I had changed it sometime back to 1, and that's why it is visible. Now if you change this value to 0, if you press 0 and enter now, and now if you take the line command, you can see the aperture is not present. It is hidden from our view, but of course it is working. So how do we know it's working? Because as soon as we bring it closer to any of the objects, the nearer we bring it to the object, the snap points, the object snap points start appearing on the object. So you can see end point is being displayed here. If for some reason these points are not displayed, you just might want to check out the options from here at the bottom in the drawing area. This is object snap option, and you have to ensure that not only are most of these options selected, but that the icon is turned blue. Right now it is deactivated and you can't see the object snap working, but when it is active you can see these are working. So aperture essentially helps us to select points carefully. We'll discuss more about the uses of aperture later when we start drawing real objects. So AP box is something called as the system variable, and the value stored in the AP box essentially controls whether the aperture will be visible or not. There is another system variable over here that's called aperture. With aperture, what you can do is you can change the size of the aperture. Let me just make it visible first. The aperture value I'm changing it, AP box value I'm changing it as 1, and next when I take line command, you can see the aperture is visible at the plotter. Next I'll just change the command to aperture, and now it's displaying a value of 10. That is, the size of aperture is 10 right now. I'll just make it 50 just to show you how the aperture works. And now if I take line command, you'll be able to see the aperture size change on the plotter. Now, so it's very big, and you can see as soon as some object comes within this box called aperture, the snap object points start appearing. So if I click even at this particular position, it will essentially start at the quadrant. So this is what is the use of aperture. Let me reduce the size of aperture back, because size this large is going to be very disturbing. I'll just change it back to 10. So similarly, there are other system variables like cursor size, which changes the size of crosshair. Cursor size. Fine. So when you're typing, you can see the commands are appearing at the top. You don't have to remember the spelling or the shortcut. You just start typing as initial few letters, and the command line will help you by providing the essentials. Right now you can see the crosshair size is 4. Let me just make it 20, and here you can see that the lines, the crosshair size has increased tremendously. So these crosshair size, it's of no use actually. It's just for display purpose, but it doesn't allow us to choose the point exactly in the horizontal direction, but helps us identify it approximately. So that is another thing. So that is it for this video. We will stop this video at this point of time. We have studied a lot of things about AutoCAD. We have seen how to navigate among the AutoCAD. We also saw in the beginning something about machine drawing and how we are slowly shifting toward CAD software. We saw the different categories of the CAD softwares and the CAD softwares right now available in the market. You may have to do a little bit of research regarding what kind of software are being used by different companies. I hope you will be able to find out more about that. And that's it. If you just give us a thumbs up if you like our video, and do share it with your friends. Thank you.